Democracy.
Is a joke
It's a lie.
being told by the West.
And that is what we're going to tell you. Asad,
Take
break
it
it
away.
down.
Democracy at its core means literally people ruling over themselves,
By the people, for the people.
of the people.
But the people are retarded. तूने वो शो का
Yeah,
वीडियो देखी
yeah.
है?
But the people are retarded.
The problem is that when you go for a system that is, because not everybody has the same kind of education and life experiences, right? So everybody's talking from a different perspective. Let's say you've been in the military all your life and you've worked the borders, seen the problems firsthand, seen the threats that the nation of Pakistan or any of the nation state receives. Your perspective is skewed towards security. Let's say you're a businessman and you've made good money manufacturing or doing some kind of retail business or exporting or even doing an agriculture business. You look at the country from a different perspective. You're a civil servant, so on and so forth. You're a teacher. All these different perspectives in a democracy are ideally supposed to come together and form an elegant solution that the majority agrees upon. But this ends up happening nowhere because power is power. We like to believe that knowledge is power and this is power and believing in the basic human rights for people is power at the core, but no. Physical power is physical power, whether it be a one-on-one confrontation or it be nation state versus nation state. We've seen this in interactions between nation states, whether it be America slowly and steadily colonizing virtually the entire world, before that the British Empire, and before that many other different empires, or the rise of China and their new way of colonizing the entire world by increasing free trade with them and then subsequently killing them with low prices
End it.
and subsequent debt. So if it doesn't exist between nation states and the governments of those nations use ruthless tactics to get their way, what makes you think this doesn't happen on their local population? So I'll give you 3 examples. One from the States, one from China, and one from Pakistan. In the United States of America, although you have 2 parties with different candidates, the foreign policy and the financial policy and the tax breaks all remain the same and have remained the same for the last 150 years. They've all been skewed towards the rich, they've all been skewed towards warmongering, and they've all been skewed towards global hegemony. China literally is a one-party system, so there the evidence is quite clear.
But China is not a democracy, right?
Well, I mean, China is as much of a democracy as any of these other nation states because there is no such thing as varying degrees of freedom.
Are you sure?
Yes, this is a myth. This is a myth that has been propagated to you by the proponents of democracy because they wanted you to go through the processes of establishing a democracy without actually ever having to establish it because they never established it themselves. So they create this illusion where they give you things that you are free to choose from. What kind of bagel should I eat? What restaurant should I go to? What kind of expensive car should I buy? What kind of girl should I marry? What kind of nightclub should I go to? What kind of alcohol should I consume? And they take away true freedom because they remove those topics that affect the entire world from discourse altogether. The same is true for Pakistan. The same is true for China. The same is true for Russia. There is no difference. So if freedom doesn't exist in all 4, but they employ different tactics, then the problem is the same. You can sugarcoat it. Normally the bully gets the moral high ground because everyone's scared. When you're in school and there's a kid that's bullying everybody, nobody confronts him because they're fearful. In fact, they start to gravitate towards him. This is true for nation states. This is true for within nation states. So democracy does not exist as it does on paper in any nation state. The democracies that we have are a series of compromises. It is the citizens of a nation state taking inch by inch whatever freedom they can wrestle from any establishment in the government. I think in a podcast before we talked about how an establishment, we think of establishment as the military, but no. An establishment is actually a consortium of people. It's normally the armed forces of any nation state, the judicial bloc of a nation state, the parliamentarians of a nation state, and to some degrees, the civil servants of a nation state.
And maybe even जो बड़े business owners होते हैं वो भी उसी खत्ते में आ जाते हैं.
They come on a secondary level. Again, this is a huge assumption that people have that money buys you power. No. With one stroke of a pen, you can dismantle entire businesses. So, an elected official, a military officer, the power that they hold, or a judge, is not equal to the power that money buys. Money can again help you in buying an inch. So Bill Gates can afford a foot, and a citizen can afford an inch. That's the difference of money, right? But who determines whether you get an inch or a foot? You're not part of that conversation in any of these countries, right? Maybe to some extent in really small nation states with minimal populations and large resources, sure. But in that case, it's normally a utopian euphoria where you really aren't concerned with what's happening all over the world or within your own country. And those countries sort of become depressing, like Denmark, which have one of the highest suicide rates. It's a huge problem. People don't want to get married, have families, propagate their gene, make the nation state bigger. It's a complacency. So democracy as an experiment is falling into the same problems that most dictatorships did, most communist regimes did, is that eventually a few people just wrestle control. And those that don't believe in this wish to live in this delusion because it is far more comfortable to believe that if we vote Imran Khan in, we'll be freer. If you vote Nawaz Sharif in, we'll be freer. If the chief of army staff, Musharraf, takes over the country's finances will become better. If you look at Pakistan in 75 years, the country's finances have never had anything to do with who was elected. It has always had to do with whose war are we fighting. So major economic booms in Pakistan came when we decided to fight other people's wars, whether it be against the Russians or whether it be against Muslims in Afghanistan and Iraq. Even now, if we agree to fight certain wars for the Saudi Arabian government, for the Chinese government, for the American government, you will see dollars start to pump into the country. So democracy does not exist anywhere the way we have been taught, the way you identified in the beginning of the podcast. Democracy, what we have learned, is basically a softer dictatorship. It's a bitter pill that we're forced to swallow. Yes. Is it better than living under Saddam? Yes. Is it better than living under Gaddafi? Yes. You have some room. But I guess this is all the room that citizens of the world can afford right now. Even if you look at the United Nations, an organization of countries coming together with the entire express purpose of A, stopping the next major world war, and two, trying to codify a set of human rights so that other nation states can follow suit and improve the living conditions of their people. But they dare not say anything to the states. They dare not say anything to Israel. They dare not say anything to China. If you look at these three nations that we've mentioned, they have terrible human rights records. They have engaged in, one of them is engaging in apartheid of sorts. Two of them are waging all kinds of warfare the entire world. Nation states like Pakistan, like America, like India, they do not stand for any principle. They just stand for the quickest buck. They make compromises all the time. So Pakistan was formed on an idea. And that ideal was a separate homeland in the subcontinent for the Muslims. Did it develop that way? No. One of the reasons for it not developing that way is because you don't need a separate homeland to enforce Islam. So what you had was you divided a large chunk of land into basically now what is three major pieces. Those three major pieces all have cultural links to each other. So does Afghanistan, so does Iraq, so does Iran. Once you separated what used to be one loose, big territory, you created artificial borders. This is why Islam always talks about pan-Islamism, Muslims everywhere. Right? Borders, yes, to define areas, but relationships across borders because we're all Muslim, one ummah. So once we accepted those artificial lines, problems started to pile up. Problems were being played upon. You pitted people's personal greed versus the best for the nation state. And in that matter, personal greed has always won. Whether it be Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, whether it be Bill Clinton caught in a scandalous affair with Monica Lewinsky, whether it be Donald Trump and his dubious ties with Russia, whether it be Nawaz Sharif and his business interests in India, whether it be Imran Khan and the pressure that he has from the British social circle to make Pakistan align in a certain way.
What kind of way?
When you come from a culture of, what's the word I'm looking for? Posturing. So the British culture, in my opinion, is one of posturing, where they'll say, oh, this is the right way and these are the rights that we have to enforce, but never actually doing anything about it. That is the culture that Imran Khan comes from. If you look at his 3.5 years, it was a lot of posturing. Oh, we're going to catch Nawaz Sharif, we're going to make sure he pays for his crimes. But he let Nawaz Sharif go, right? You can claim that Bajwa made me do it. The day Bajwa made you do it, you should have resigned. That should have been the last day in office. He claimed that we would clean up corruption in X amount of days. He couldn't do it in 3.5 years. He claimed that we're going to make the economy boom in XYZ factor. Somewhat successful. The full result we never got to see, because the full result comes in 5 years when you go for the next election cycle. But this is true for all politicians. This is true for all those people that actually run the democracy, that have tricked you into believing that you have power. So, and I believe that democracy cannot exist even in the way we learn on paper. Because why would powerful rich people with control of great military assets let you and me make decisions? Look at it this way. We go to school. In the class, the teacher is right. In the school, the headmistress, the principal, the headmaster is right. In our homes, our parents are right. When we go to learn a sport, the sports teacher is always right. So what are we learning to do in all these activities?
Obey.
Exactly. Out of these, those that rebel at a young age go into one of two categories. They either go into leaders or they go into being the scum of society. By scum, I mean the very bottom tier, right? Who reject this system, who don't understand this idea of where you say something and I obey without questioning why. And then you have everybody else in the middle. So this is how things work. A lot of people now start talking about, we need to escape the matrix and we need to do this and we need to do that. You can't escape the matrix. The world is the matrix. The entire world has been mapped beyond belief, except for the oceans and what's in them, clearly, as we found out what just happened when people went looking for the Titanic, right? The entire world has been mapped. There's no way you can hide. Your mobile phones are tracking devices. Everything you do is documented. So you can't escape the matrix. What you can do, however, is improve the matrix. So everybody propagating to escape the matrix is either doing one of two things. They're either misidentifying the problem because they're too stupid, or number two, they're misidentifying the problem because they're trying to make money off it. So you see these programs, if you follow these 5 steps, you'll make lots of good money. And if you follow these 3 steps in this pyramid scheme, you make this kind of money. Sure. In all of this nonsense, there are people who are genuinely trying to improve the situation. But what they end up doing is that they make it sort of a men-centric situation in this particular space. This has somehow happened, I would say, organically, because the most oppressed, and this is about the entire world, we're not talking about first world countries, the most financially stuck in the matrix are men. Because when you are part of the financial ecosystem of a nation state, making money, spending money, buying property, that's when you feel the true financial constraints. Because you now start to understand how little you have and how everything has become so expensive.
But wouldn't you say that women suffer more, especially in third world countries, where all the financial capital and all the financial liberty is with the men?
They may suffer more, but they will understand less because they're not part of that system. This is not a knock on men and women. It's just an observation of the system. So if I have to go 9 to 5 and work, and I have to make X amount of money to pay for X amount of house, to pay for X amount of car, I am now part of the financial machine trying to make that money. So I will understand how hard or how easy it is. Yes, my wife will feel the pinch of not having money, but she will not understand the processes. So this is true for majority of the world, because majority of the world happens to be third world. And in cases where women are in the workforce, they understand it too. But for some reason, the movement has become primarily about men. And this is something to do with appealing to a majority of audiences. So like, for example, people listening to you right now, right? If we ran a survey between guys and girls in working age, probably 80% of the guys will be working. And probably 30-40% of the girls will be working. This has nothing to do with our opinion on whether women should work or not, or whether women should be educated or not. This is to do with facts, right? I think women should work. There's nothing wrong with it. I think all women should definitely be educated and all men should be educated. But we're just talking about cold hard facts. Now, in this system, right, where you're financially stuck all the time, where do you experience freedom in a democracy? In the United States of America, the moment a child graduates from school, he's in $80,000, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 in debt, right? What's the first thing a landlord does when he gets a new family to work on his land? He gives them money. He gives them more money than they've seen for the next 5 years. He puts them in debt. And that's how you get bonded labor. So you're doing that to the next generation. And you've made it compulsory to have a university degree to get even the most basic of jobs. So this means that everybody has to go to college. Everybody has to go to good school. Everybody has to do some kind of internship in college. Because when you apply for a job all over the first world, they don't give you a good job out of college without internship and experiences. So you've spent 22, 23 years of life learning a skill set which doesn't have actual financial value in the real world unless it's like a engineering degree or very specialized degree. About 60-70% of students end up doing generic general degrees, which have no real money-making applications in the world. And now, with all this debt on their head, they have to work jobs. How can you be productive? How can you be free? It's not possible. How can you suddenly decide to stop what you're doing and re-educate yourself, read a book, go and travel? You can't do these things, right? And slowly and steadily, you drudge away your entire life, you get married at the right age, have 2 kids, put them in debt, and keep making more laborers for the machine.
Right, but wouldn't you say that throughout human history, people have already had it really rough in that these leisures that we assume should be rights for humans, for example, reading a book or traveling, humans 100, maybe 200 years from now, before now, couldn't even imagine doing these
See,
things.
that's the thing, right? I agree. This has been the system ever since time began. So why all of a sudden put a moral judgment on having a democracy or not in your country? That's the problem. You do the same thing, I do the same thing. Yours is called a democracy, mine's called a theocracy, a kingdom, a fiefdom, a dictatorship, whatever, say a controlled democracy, a single party democracy. How are you better than me? That is the issue. That is the problem. When you create a moral high ground, you have to enforce it in your country first. And then you can propagate it to others. It's like we say, if a person starts praying 5 times a day, becomes a good Muslim, stops lying, stops cheating in business, gives love to his wife, takes care of his children, takes care of his parents, that is the person you should be listening to for advice.
Alright, but then like a common criticism is that why are people migrating en masse to these first world countries?
That's very interesting. Give me 200 years, I'll rob your countries, bring all the wealth to my country, make you adhere to my cultural systems, and then we'll see if the people stay in your country. Why did all of Europe run to the Middle East in the golden age of Islam? All the wealth was there. So this is nonsensical. You cannot create a moral high ground by dangling a financial carrot, right? So accept Western liberal democracy because we have all the money. This is what the Dajjal will do. He will give you food when there will be no food to eat. So this is not the way you operate in good faith. You give me an idea, so I look at the merits. You don't give me an idea and show me a gun. You don't give me an idea and then give me a gold brick. That's bribing or threatening. So you see the problem? So this boat of Pakistanis that unfortunately died on the way to, I believe it was Italy? Greece, sorry. May Allah grant them Jannah, may give their family sabr. They were going for two reasons. The obvious was that the financial situation in Pakistan is tough. The secondary, deeper reason that probably even they did not understand is that our nation state or the area we live in has been pillaged for 300 years. All the wealth was stolen. And then when the British left, they ensured. First for India, they ensured that Pakistan exists as a checkmate. And then for Pakistan, they ensured that Afghanistan exists as a checkmate. So they basically left you in a hapless state. Despite of that, we survived 75 years. And inshallah, we will survive till the end of time. We made a nuclear bomb despite of that. We made some kind of financial progress despite of that. They kept giving you aid, kept trapping you in different wars. Yes, a few people decided for us to go to those wars. A few people decided for us to go into those traps. Just like a few people decide in the States what is going to happen as far as the foreign policy on invading countries is concerned. What is going to happen on Abu Ghraib? What is going to happen on Guantanamo Bay? What is going to happen with Roe v. Wade? It's a few people deciding. Right? The same thing happens in Pakistan. It just so happens that their few are the superpower and we're a third world country. So if we talk about during the Mughal Empire, when a few people decide what was going to happen, Indian subcontinent was the richest place on earth. The entire world came here to trade.
Right.
That's not long ago, that's 300 years ago. As far as human history is concerned, 300 years is this. If you look at 1400 years ago, when Hazrat Muhammad brought Islam to all of Makkah and Medina and the entire Saudi Arabia, and then so on the entire world, it was a light in a time of darkness, and the world gravitated towards it. Salahuddin Ayyubi goes to fight. He goes to fight the Christians in Jerusalem. At that time, Salahuddin Ayyubi is the light. He despises war crimes. He despises holding people hostage for no reason. He is so kind that he is remembered to this day. So yes, benevolent dictators have existed. Benevolent leaders have existed. Democracy has never existed. It was always a farce. Because when you look at democracy in a nutshell, and let's say your age is 32, 33, you worked 10, 12 years, do you see it happening? In your office, there's what, 60, 70 employees? You know all of them personally, you have conversations with them. They all vote. Do they all have the same IQ? No. Do they all have the same understanding of the financial models of Pakistan? No. But they all vote. Do you really believe that billionaires, the military industrial complex, huge political parties will just let you and me decide? I think to believe that is to be naive and stupid. In fact, it's only logical to believe that no, the system is rigged in every single way. Let's look at the Andrew Tate case, right? So a person has not been charged of a crime and he's held in jail almost indefinitely and then placed under house arrest. When you arrested that person, why did you arrest him? On the basis of what? We don't know. They're not going to tell us. Okay, why did you detain him if you can't charge him? We don't know. They won't tell us. Why did you put him under house arrest? We don't know. They won't tell us. I'm not saying I like Andrew Tate. If this happened to somebody I disliked, I would still have a problem with it. I disagree with Jordan Peterson. A lot of views that Andrew Tate has, a lot of the views that Joe Rogan has, a lot of the views that Donald Trump has, a lot of the views that Joe Biden has. But nobody should be treated like this. You cannot just pick people up the street, make some absurd claim and put them in jail. That's incorrect. But this happens in Pakistan, in China, in America, in France, in Romania, in Saudi Arabia, in India, in Iran, all over the world. They all have different types of democracies. So what is the point that drives to the center of your brain when you look at all this? That democracy doesn't exist. It's a farce. You're telling me that the Queen of England who's passed away, her brother was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, caught with a young woman, there's a picture, and the royal family still exists as they do. And they didn't know. How can this happen? how can this possibly you believe what people believe? How is it that Jeffrey Epstein and this entire scandal is exposed and the man commits suicide while on suicide watch and the cameras aren't working? In the biggest democracy in the world. If this happened in Pakistan, we all know what happened, right? They turned the camera. This happened in America, right? So if America cannot hold itself up to its standards, why should the world? This now makes you question what are the standards that the world should be upheld to. 15 years ago, there used to be this debate about cultural relativism versus universal human rights, right? That a codified set of human rights makes no sense for 6 billion people. Right? There's still tribes in the Amazon that are in the Bronze Age, I believe, and there's some tribes in the Stone Age, just off the Indian Ocean. There's places in Africa where they don't know what electricity is.
There's places in Pakistan where they don't know what electricity is.
Pakistan is a fully developed nation state. My point being is that cultural relativism dictates that if a group of people get together, and is probably the most democratic thing, a bunch of people got together and they said, listen, we think these practices are okay and these practices are bad. And we have agreed upon it and we will live by these rules. Very democratic. Then all of a sudden, a big brother comes in, no. This piece of paper is a unified set of human rights and you all believe this because all humans deserve this. Who are you to decide? Capital punishment is a perfectly good form of punishment. I believe that it is the correct way to do things. I believe someone steals, you should cut their hand off. Who are you to decide this shouldn't happen this way? You think it's normal to put a human being for 12 years in a box with other criminals where there is sodomy, drugs, all kinds of mental abuse, and then release them back into the population? You think this is okay?
And also capitalize on the free labor that they provide while they're in there.
Listen, we don't talk about those things. Because if we talked about those things, they would just censor you. They would put you away. Because those are the kinds of things that make people start to think. One of the best decisions of my life was to work in real estate. Because in Pakistan, everybody who makes any kind of money goes and meets a real estate agent. So you get to meet big industrialists, big landlords, medium-sized business owners, people who work jobs, people who do illegal activities, all kinds of politicians, army officers buy real estate. So you get to meet judges, like everybody. You get to meet all those kinds of people. So what do you learn? All of them are following where the money is going. They're all looking at every kind of financial market to see where the money is being pushed and they place their money there. So whoever's higher on the democratic ladder of power will have the best information. And everyone's trying to access that information because they've been led to believe another great democratic lie. I guess this is a Western liberal democracy lie, is the more you have, the happier you are, the better your life is. This was the entire Cold War. It was the American propagation of consumerism versus the twisted understanding of communism presented to us. Because we had to go on what was happening in the world as opposed to what was written in papers. It's not wrong to make money. It's not wrong to work hard. It is, however, wrong for large companies to collude with governments to make money. It is wrong for MNCs to try and purchase all the rainwater in third world countries. It is wrong for MNCs to fund and destabilize nation states in Africa so that they can get supply of their oil, their diamonds. It is wrong for entire countries to operate like companies like China and try to buy out nation states. But this is the hyper-capitalistic consumer market that America has made.
Okay, but a common defense of democracy that's presented is that it might be a flawed system, but it is the only system we found that works and guarantees relative freedom to its people.
Again, the first thing that I said is that, okay, you have to define what relative freedom is. Because there's something that, but this is, I guess, a local hero, Tipu Sultan said, it's better to live one day as a lion, right? So relative freedom is no freedom for a lion. That is the way you should view the world. You're either free or you're not. If you live like a lion, it's black and white. If you live like sheep, relative freedoms exist. This is a problem. Because those nation states that live without this relatively become harder. And we all know the saying, hard times make for hard men make for easy times make for easy men, and so on and so forth.
For soft men.
I guess. Say,
Easy men would mean that they're very easy, they easily put out or something.
most soft men do. So in my mind, there's no such thing as relative freedom. Like, there is freedom or there is none. So freedom, if it truly existed in all these nation states, right? Except for maybe strategic locations of where the army encampment is, where the nuclear weapons are, where the F-16 stand, where the Raptors are developed, we would have access to what happens in Congress, what happens in subcommittees. We would have access to the fact that the CIA ran most drug operations in Latin America during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. We would have access to what was happening in Abu Ghraib. We would have access in Pakistan to what happens in Balochistan, KPK, Punjab, Sindh, what the war on Kashmir is like, vice versa for India. They would have access to those things. But you don't. Not in the freest or relatively freest of states, or not in the most totalitarian of governments. What does that mean? That relative freedom doesn't exist. They don't want you to have the right information, which is why they'll give you other kinds of information. Useless information is worse than false information because it leads you to end up in a useless debate. Like, I'll give you an example. If you ever go on Twitter trends, right? And sometimes on Pakistan Twitter trend, you'll see a trend, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 retweets. It'll be about what was happening in a serial drama. When you look at that, that's 200,000 Twitter accounts of people in Pakistan watching a drama which has the same story as all dramas do, that man and woman fall in love, man and woman have difficulty getting married, man and woman get married, world doesn't like it, man and woman get separated, there's probably a third person, eventually everything gets
Resolved.
Story, whether it's comedy, action, drama, it's all the same. But people are so concerned about it because you've been led to believe that these celebrities lead better lives, that they lead happy lives. So you idolize them.
I mean, isn't this just entertainment that people have?
Why do you watch? I'm going to give you an example without attacking that person. Just using a name, say like Ushna Shah or Hani Amir, any name, X, right? Why is X life glamorized on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok Reels? So that they can sell the show. You're not watching the story. You're watching their private lives as you imagine it, as they've glamorized it on social media on that show.
But everybody sells themselves on social media. don't
Exactly. That's the problem. If you are selling a product, right, and that product has no intrinsic value, or it's not an information-based thing, or it's not an idea, what are you doing on social media? Oh, I'm connecting with the world. With what? What are you connecting for? What, so you can hook up with women? You can flirt with people? You can super like or heart someone's picture? What are you adding to the conversation of humanity? Like the 7 billion people, right? Nobody cares if you went to Cafe Lanto. Nobody cares. That Cafe Lanto post, that selfie in the Gucci store or with a nice car is all posturing because you've been led to believe that that's life. And celebrities are a part of that. Governments are a part of that. The entire consumeristic culture is a part of that. That is relative freedom propagated to you. So it's no freedom. You're a slave to your desires. You're a slave to money. You're a slave to things.
All right, but you could argue that in a free society, people should be free to do the things that they like doing, that they enjoy doing. I mean, if people are discussing these things on Twitter, that means that there must be something that's appealing about it to them.
Of course there is. If you are born and I indoctrinate in you that owning this iPhone worth 4 lakhs, wearing a Chopard watch worth 50, 60 lakh rupees, driving a Ferrari is the purpose of life, then you'll be like that. Does that mean you're free? No. What does it mean? You're programmed. You've been programmed to see things in a particular way.
So what's the alternative then?
The alternative is to question everything. Right? People make fun of people who say, oh, the earth is flat, right? Any idea somebody gives to me, I don't reject it. I start to look into it. I start to read the things that they're saying, then comparing it to what other people are saying, and I draw conclusions from it. If you attempt to do this not disingenuously, you will normally come to a better conclusion.
It's interesting you bring up flat earthers because I think that's a good example. With flat earthers, whenever they bring up this debate, they're immediately, put into that box of, oh, this guy's very stupid. This guy's not smart.
Yeah, I guess.
And oftentimes you'll find that they actually have a better understanding of like the heliocentric model of the earth, that the earth is round, as compared to like the average person who's calling them stupid.
Obviously, any opinion that is out there and you hold it, people will attack you, so you learn the defenses of it.
By the
Right.
way, we're not saying the earth is flat.
Not at all.
Just
We're not
so-
saying that.
Yeah.
But my point is that even an absurd idea like that, right? When you hear something, there's no reason to reject it immediately. There's also no reason to hold it to heart. Again, something I like to say, like, there is no way in your 30 years of existence you have all the information. It's just not possible. And you've made all the right decisions. This is my problem with atheists, right? Sure, fine. You think it's a long shot to believe in Allah, and you think it's a long shot to believe in the Quran and all that stuff. And you also believe it's a long shot to believe that everything came into existence because of a big bang. If both things are long shots, why is mine more absurd than yours? Why can't we just peacefully disagree? And the obvious answer that you get is that, oh, well, Muslims cannot live with the people who are free thinking and they will just attack us and kill us. No. If you make caricatures of Muhammad, sure, we'll attack you. So don't do that. I won't insult you. You won't insult me. You can live next to me. I don't care. Millions of Muslims live next to atheists and Christians and Jews. No problems. But if you're Israel and you're taking away the homes of Palestinians, removing them, throwing them out, killing them, making them disappear, attacking them, you will face resistance till the end of time. If you live in Europe and you're a right-wing organization and you believe that we should make sure Muslims don't live in our neighborhood, we have a problem. But if you treat me with respect, I'll treat you with respect. Same is true for Pakistan. This is a message to Muslims as well. If you see a Christian on the street, there's no need to disrespect them. Why are you disrespecting them? It is in the Quran that do not create situations where the disbeliever casts names upon Allah and the Prophets. Do not create an environment. Let's say you're a Christian and I'm Muslim. And I say, oh, Christians are so stupid and they are dumb and they don't know anything. This will anger you? Yes? What will you do? You'll try to make me angry. What is the easiest target? You will say something to Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. What you will do is wrong, but what I have done is wrong as well. Do you remember that Indian BJP politician? What was her name? Noorpur Sharma, right? If you see the full clip, it is the Muslim Imam who says something to her regarding Shivling, which Hindus have a belief is the genitalia of Lord Shiv, I believe, right? Or a manifestation of it. He makes a joke about it, and in response, she says this. If he had read the Quran, he would not do this. This is a problem. Incomplete knowledge. Because we are all a slave to certain basic things like hunger. We need to make money to eat. We need to make money to get shelter. We need to make money to have transport. We need to make money to have children. These I understand. We are slave to these things. But they did, very interestingly, just kept increasing the bar kept increasing the bar, kept increasing, just kept it out of reach, just kept it out of reach.
Who did?
The people who control the entire world.
What, like a cabal?
No,
secret
no.
cabal
You
or
see,
something?
again, it is easy to, and it is fantastical to say that, oh, there's a cabal or the Illuminati or everybody's together or it's the builder project. No. All rich people think alike, and all poor people think alike. Rich people consolidate their wealth and set up their children in positions of power all over the world. The way Nawaz Sharif's family operates, the Adani family, the Ambani family, the Tata family in India operate. It's the same way the warlords of Afghanistan operated. It's the same way the Shah of Iran, MBS, his father operated. It's the same way Donald Trump and his kids operate, or any other politician. Nancy Pelosi operates. It's the way Bill Clinton and then Hillary Clinton operated. So rich people and powerful people intend to keep their money and keep their power. So this operate in that way, right? So there is no big cabal. Yes, sure, they copy each other, especially because the internet, where you know exactly what's happening everywhere in the world. They don't need to make a cabal. So independently, in their areas of territory, they normally apply the same policies. If you look at medieval kingdoms of Europe, so the interaction between the kings was minimal. They had sort of similar policies because they had sort of the similar terrains and sort of similar kind of serfs living there. So they had similar ways to control them. So I do not see any situation in which a democracy exists. So this thing that we said in the beginning, that democracy is a joke, I truly believe that, and the older I grow, the more I believe that. I'll give you another example, right? Michael Bloomberg is a politician for the Democratic Party, yes? Every year, he gives $90 to $95 million to the Democratic Party. Now, this money doesn't go to a charity. It doesn't go to the United States government to fund different things. It goes to the Democratic Party. First of all, how many employees does the Democratic Party have, and what kind of functions do they perform that they need so much money to run their operation? And he's, by the way, one of many. It's probably like billions of, we're talking probably, I would say $800, $900 million a year that the Democratic collects. And it's true for Republicans. I'm just giving an example. He also happens to be a member of parliament for the Democratic Party. So it's basically pay to play. So he pays $100 million. The Democratic Party in power makes tax breaks that save him $400, $500, $600 million. So he's basically paying a bribe. This is a nuanced way of taking bribes, right? A non-nuanced way is Pakistan in India, where somebody literally shows up with a suitcase of money and asks you, okay, if you do this, this is yours, right? So the problem is the same. The money volume is probably bigger over there because the economy is bigger. Then how come we are the most corrupt and you are also very clean, and Russia is the most corrupt and China has rampant corruption? Well, doesn't Ukraine? Isn't there a right-wing nationalist party who support the Nazis in Ukraine? How come that's never been said or highlighted? Also, when you don't allow the development of other political structures and you literally bomb them and you take over their countries, you can't really say there's no other model. You've destroyed all of them. You ensured that none of them exist. Also, let's point out the most obvious hypocrisy you can think of. So, a dictator is still somebody who seized power. A king was just born into it.
Right.
Right. So, is it okay for democracies to trade with kingdoms? Their people are not free at all. And they make no qualms about it. They don't lie, which is a good thing. They're honest. They don't give their people their rights, as you say. So why trade with them? Why be their closest ally for 60 years? This again shows you that it is not, I think the average American citizen will not want to trade with Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Because they believe that freedoms don't exist there. Oh, women could not drive and do this and blah blah. It's very wrong, terrible. But the American government does. If we ran a countrywide survey that said that Pakistan should attack Israel immediately for the atrocities happening in Lebanon, I believe a majority of people would say yes. Would we go and attack them? No. The opinion in a relative freedom country can maximum be put on social issues which the government puts forward to them. So the government will basically go like, okay, this is meat.
Right.
This is the best part. This is the worst part. You can have this and argue as much as you want. And we will push this as much as we can. So this is the piece of meat they give you so that the dog knows who the master is. The dog then just chews the meat, looks at the master lovingly and lives life.
Okay. Another problem that's often or a critique of democracy that is brought up is that democracy always sort of protects the status quo. In that, if there are two candidates running for, let's say, president or running for office, people will always tend to choose the person who has the most moderate views instead of going for somebody who's a bit more towards the extreme. Because generally in democracy, like people are going to reach some sort of average consensus. They're going to be neither too left, neither too right.
Some compromise. Most people lie in the center.
Yeah, they lie in the center. Even, in America with the two-party system, you see that with minute social differences, like both parties are more or less the same.
They just have social differences.
Right.
And I even think they don't actually have differences. They got together and said, these are three issues. We will say this and you will say this. Until the end of time, we shall fight.
Exactly. And then, you have like packages where for like the conservatives, it's
Guns.
climate change isn't real, ban abortions.
Yeah.
And for the Democrats, it's like the opposite of those things. And there's nobody who sort of has like a mixed opinion.
Yes.
You either have one or you have
I think
the
they don't let those parties exist. They don't let them get the kind of sponsorship that needs. Like, it's so surprising that in the world's greatest democracy, there are only two parties.
Right.
In that sense, Pakistan is a bigger democracy. We have three.
Yeah, with
Right.
widely different
India has
views.
many.
Yes. And but again, like the problem is
The difference between the Chinese democracy and the American democracy is one party. That's the difference.
technically, yeah.
Yeah.
But even in Pakistan, if you look at Pakistan, the people that come into power, again, their difference of opinion is not really that great. And the parties that do have like great overarching sort of philosophical, thoughts, they sort of just get pushed to the sideline because the majority just doesn't want to vote for them. The majority will mostly pick whatever is, or it'll tend towards the center.
Pakistan became a democracy 75 years ago, right? It became a democracy at the beginning of control. As governments gain more control, more access to your private lives, that's when Pakistan became a democracy. So Pakistan has always existed in a state of complete control. The narrative that all political parties and the establishment has given you who is more corrupt. It's like you're playing a game. It's hot potato. Corrupt. And that is the issue of the country. We've had great financial success under Zardari and PPP, under Nawaz Sharif and PMLN, under PTI and Imran Khan. What are they fighting on? What is the issue? What is the defining factor? Who is more corrupt? Shehbaz Sharif said that we will drag Zardari through the streets. Zardari said that if this time we don't put away with Nawaz Sharif, we don't send him to jail, even God will not forgive us. Imran Khan has been shouting that there is no bigger thief than Nawaz Sharif. And he doesn't talk about Zardari because he thinks Zardari is such a big thief that he should not even be addressed. Like someone is so bad that even mentioning him is an insult to everyone's presence. This is the grand debate of Pakistan. And you really think this debate is not engineered? Of course it is. It's engineered by the parties. It's engineered by all the corrupt people involved. You think the bureaucracy actually wants to end corruption, or judges do? Why would they? They're the beneficiaries of it. You think, why has there never been a grand debate of all political parties saying the bureaucracy is the most corrupt, the judges are the most corrupt? Because they're all in cahoots. They have decided that the mouthpieces, the political parties, will build this narrative against each other, and all of us will benefit. So it becomes more and more evident it's a rigged game.
Do you think that on a fundamental level, people want to do good for their country?
No. Not
You
the
don't?
people we're talking about, no. I don't. Average Pakistani? Yes. You, me, Salman? Yes. We want to do good. Because we have nothing. When you have nothing, you wish for combined benefit. Because you have nothing. When you have something, you wish for your something to grow, not someone else's. So all the people right now, okay, I understand I'm talking in absolutes. It's probably 90%, right? We'll ignore the 10% people just stuck there doing their jobs, right? But we're talking about a significant portion of people, which means that the system will not adhere in the right direction, will not go in the right direction. No, I don't believe it. Now, after thinking more and more and more, I am forced to think, why did Imran Khan not resign? Why did Nawaz Sharif not resign? Why did Yusuf Raza Gilani not resign? Why did Benazir not resign? Why did Zulfikar Ali Bhutto not resign? If you're saying the army runs everything, why did you wait until they kicked you out? Just resign. If I work in a company and I say, listen, there is mental abuse, I'm not going to work here, here's my resignation. That is one step and different. Or you fire me from the company and then I say, oh, you know what? There was mental abuse in this company. No. If you are the leader of the Pakistani people, we have to hold you to a higher standard. You have to be stronger than us, better than us. You're the leader. You're supposed to be the best of the nation. That's why we voted for you. But if you act in such a childish and callous manner where you're all fighting for a seat and causing billions of dollars of loss of life to the Pakistani people, then no. You don't want to do good. If you wanted to do good, right, the PDM would never have ousted Imran. If Imran wanted to do good, he would have never left parliament. He wouldn't have left. You really say, okay, so they had government in Punjab and KPK, right? And they had a 1.5 year left. In that 1.5 year, they couldn't have helped anyone in Punjab and KPK. They could have. What did they choose to do? They choose to resign, shut those governments down, try to have a general election, win the general election, then come into power. So you're selfish. That's not in the best interest of the country.
But so this sounds like what you've described as the fundamental problem of the human condition, which is something that, Plato sort of
Hence, thus, democracy can't exist.
which Plato sort of highlighted in the Republic, where he said that good people by their very nature will never want to lead because, number one, they'll be afraid of the responsibility, and number two, they won't think themselves capable of being in such a high position of power, and therefore he argued that we have to either incentivize them to do so, or we must set up systems that keep bad people in check.
The systems have failed. So Plato gave you two options, right? One option, the world tried, it failed. A system of checks. It's not worked. There's a second option that he gave, which was actually his first thought. A system of incentives. At this point, the second model of Plato, a system of checks, has become so corrupt that they actually incentivize being bad. Who are the richest people in Pakistan right now? Criminals, land grabbers, murderers, politicians, right? So you've been incentivized to be bad. Who are the good people? Middle class, lower middle class, poor people, to some extent rich people, some, few of them. The incentivization isn't necessarily monetary. Most men and most women don't work for just money, they work for prestige. Abdul Sattar Eidi and thousands of people like him, by the way, probably millions in Pakistan, the amount of charity work that they do anonymously just to help people shows to you that they don't even do it for prestige. They're trying to just help the nation state. The incentivization that should exist should start at a very young age. We should be able to differentiate in schools those that work together well with others, that care for their entire class, so on and so forth. But for that, we'll have to change the education system. Because as I said to you many months ago in a podcast, there's no point going to school, there's no point getting a degree, and people made jokes about it. But this is exactly what I'm trying to explain to you. You're programmed from day one to be a slave. Very few of you will reject it. You'll just always be a slave. I'll give you an example. All of my friends after 8th went to college, right? And they were having this wonderful time, and they were hanging out in groups and friends and going on trips. You know what I was doing? I was in Raivan selling real estate. I was 19. And everybody made fun of me and said, he's not going to amount to anything in life. And I believed it. For some time, I really thought that, obviously they're going to get an education. They're going to get like high paying jobs. I will just be selling real estate. I was 19. I was stupid. Fast forward to when we're 25, right? And I have made decent amount of money.
An undisclosed amount of money.
Yes. An undisclosed, decent sized amount of money. I'm well settled. I can do whatever I want, go anywhere I want, buy almost any car. Within a reasonable, I'm not going to buy an 8 crore rupee car. That's just insane. Like, people's houses don't cost that much, right? But I can buy a Prado, a Fortuner, anything I want basically. Go to any country in the world, eat at any restaurant I want, stay at almost any hotel. So, and I look at their lives. They're all working jobs, making at most 4 lakh a month, and on average 150. They all need money all the time. They all go to restaurants more than I do. They all have better clothes than I do. They have the same phone that I do. They all drive the similar cars or nicer cars than I do. They've been programmed and they never got out of it. And I was lucky enough to get out of it because I started to sell real estate. Not because of the intrinsic value of real estate, but because it was a sales job. A sales job shows you the world from an entirely new perspective, right? So this is the problem. We have changed the education system to create leaders with good moral values from a young age. I didn't know anybody in school that wanted to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan. And I went to 8th, an elite school where the leaders of tomorrow come, right? 0 people showed interest. A batch above me, batch below me, same. 0% showed interest. Either in civil service or the army or politics, nothing. All of them wanted to make money. That's it. So, you have to incentivize from a young age. You have to create those systems in your house. You have to incentivize it in your house. When a sibling helps a sibling, that should be rewarded more than a sibling getting high marks. High marks shows that you have an aptitude to learn things and repeat them. But someone's helping someone else shows empathy, shows compassion, shows the ability to read the situation and push somebody through it. It shows a huge depth of understanding the human psyche. That's far more important. One of the biggest problems that we have is that the people in our nation states that have made money or have positions of power have no empathy. They can't relate. They don't have depth of emotion. They are fixated on small things. It's the problem with Imran Khan, Nawaz Sharif, Zardari, all the same. If you really think about it, the dollar has escalated. I would say millions of people's net worth has halved in terms of buying power. Industries have shut down. People are hungry, starving on the streets. Because unfortunately, because of the rains that we've had in recent times, there's going to be a wheat shortage, right? Because the floods in Sindh that happened some time ago, there's still a problem there. How come none of these leaders ever stopped, got together and said, listen, we are stuck, we need money, let's go get that money. Every time Shahbaz Sharif went abroad, Imran Khan was there praying, let's hope he doesn't get money. Every time Imran Khan had some kind of meeting with a foreign journalist, Nawaz Sharif was sitting there praying, please ask him a tough question, please ask him a tough question. What do these people not understand? Being great leaders, you have a responsibility or a duty to protect your people. Why aren't you doing that? And how can I believe that you are great people if you have no empathy? Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the greatest person to have ever lived. As a Muslim, we believe this. Why? Because he gave the world Islam. What does Islam teach you? How to treat prisoners, how to treat non-Muslims, how to treat your wife, how to treat your children, how to treat your parents. It teaches you social interaction. It doesn't teach you financial systems. It teaches you how to live in a society. And that is the thing lacking in our leaders. That's why Hazrat Muhammad is the greatest leader. That is why Hazrat Abu Bakr is the great leader. Hazrat Umar is the great leader. Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Usman, Imam Hassan Hussain are great leaders. They showed you how to live. Do you think Imran Khan is a good example of how to live? He's on his third wife. Poor decisions. Doesn't know his kids. Has no interaction with them. Has strained relationships with his sisters. So much so that when he was coming back from jail, what did he say? And we all saw that video, that these people were going for my wife Bushra. And his sister says, oh, but they were going for me as well. And he's like, oh, no. You don't matter. But they were going for Bushra as if like she is some goddess. This is a mindset. Is Nawaz Sharif's life a good life? He's obese. He is sick. He's a glutton. Shahbaz Sharif, you've heard the womanizing stories. Maryam Nawaz and how she married her husband. Hamza Sharif, we've all heard these things. What is Ayan Ali and Asir Ali Zai's relationships? A young model with the old man for what? His intellect? So, these are not the lives that an average human should aspire to. Donald Trump. That guy is a pig. Joe Biden sniffing people's hair. Vladimir Putin making people disappear, picking women up, having all kinds of extramarital affairs, being reported all over the world. So these are not the people that are examples. The reason why Hazrat Muhammad is the greatest man who ever lived is because he lived by the code. What he said, he did. In his personal and public life. Same is true for the Khulafa Rashidin. There are many other leaders who are very kind and generous and lived by what they said. So, we have put our faith in a system given by someone else that doesn't exist in their own country, in leaders that have made poor choices all their lives, have shown no empathy whatsoever for the populations or for other people in general, and you speak to me of relative freedoms. This just goes to show to you how deep the problem is. That even when presented with the facts, again and again, we still want to cling on as hard as we can. Because we don't want to accept that our parents are slaves, our grandparents were slaves, we are slaves, and our kids will be slaves. This is the harsh reality. And the only way to escape this is to create a system in which from a young age you promote the things that create good humans. Not good businessmen, not good politicians, not good lawyers, good humans. Can you remember ever in school a time where being a good person was
Rewarded.
I can't remember a time. My nephew goes to school. I can't remember a single time. This is a problem. So rather than escaping the matrix like Andrew Tate, who made his money in the matrix with the most matrix thing you can think of, we're going to sell women's bodies online, right? I would think that you should improve the matrix and start with your house, your neighbors, your family, your friends. And in this process, if you die, it's a good life.
I think that's a beautiful note to end this podcast on. This podcast that midway, for some reason, we decided to do in English. I'm not sure why, but we did it. So
I think from the start, we were speaking English.
I think we started in Urdu, but whatever.
Okay.
I'll cut those parts out. This will be an English podcast.
Okay.
Let's see how it does.
Well, thank you for having me.
Let us know in the comments if,
If it's fine.
if it was fun, or if you would like another English podcast, I suppose.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Anything that I say, or I think generally anyone says, is not to offend anybody. It is, and normally people ask this question under the podcast, "Ji, who are you and what is your experience?" Okay. So I am an A-level graduate who's been working in real estate for 13, 14 years. I'm married, have 2 kids. I have traveled the world. I have run several offices and still do to this day. I am talking to you not from book learned opinions. I'm talking to you from what I have experienced firsthand and seen. I think the problem so long in our nation has been that people have academically excelled, become analysts, tried to help governments in Pakistan, but not succeeded because they were not attached to Pakistan or to Pakistanis. I've seen many talk show hosts on TV, many political analysts analyzing things from a place where I thought, what kind of Pakistan do they see? And the entire purpose of starting this podcast was to give a common person's perspective. And that's why we like reading everybody's comments, good or bad, because it gives us unique perspectives. And inshallah, in future podcasts, you'll see that we'll get more and more common people, not famous people, common people.
This is exactly why we decided to do this podcast in English, because it's the most commonly spoken language. in
Because we
Pakistan.
feel that all Pakistanis,
Sure.
even Sindhis, speak English very well now, joke. It just so happened that I accidentally spoke in English throughout this time. It just so happened that on accident we spoke in English. But if you guys like it, okay. If you don't, then we'll go back to Urdu.
Yes. Asad, thank you so much for coming. See you in the next podcast. Woo.